Today we'll be painting this sunny little illustration of sunflowers and chamomile. I will link all of the products I'm using down below in the show notes. I'll start by using this sort of earthy brown in my medium-sized brush. Get it nice and wet and lots of paint. And then we're going to go ahead and paint these sort of irregular circular shapes. I want the edges to be a little bit imperfect because when you look at the sunflowers, they're not really a perfect shape. We're going to go with two, and they're sort of in the top half of the page. Oop, little hand, my son is painting along with me. And I'm just going to kind of keep on adding paint and texture until I feel like it's just perfect. Next up, when you look at a sunflower, they have sort of these ridges, circular ridges where you can see sort of the seed patterns. And I'm going to start with my sort of olive greenish brown, and I'm going to paint two sort of central dots, irregular of course, lots of texture. Just kind of dab, 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 right in the center of my flower. And then I'm going to add a little ridge around to the outside. Now if this is dry, your paint will not run together. The idea is to have it kind of in between. So sort of dry and sort of wet so that they sort of blend together on their own. If your paint is totally wet, then your colors are going to run and give it a little bit more time to dry. Now I'm going to take my largest brush with a pointed tip. The pointed tip really comes in handy. And I'm, oops, excuse my dog. And I'm going to use the pointed tip to form the petals. As you can see, I sort of let the tip be the point of the petal, and then I squish it down a little bit for that petal shape. And I lift up just as I get to the brown center of the flower. You can, if your center flower is dry, you can let the paint touch, and it shouldn't run too much. But for this step, I definitely recommend making sure that it is dry so that you don't end up with brown petals. A little bit is okay, but you don't want your colors to totally run. As you can see, I'm turning my paper because for some reason my brain just does better that way. So with each petal, I just sort of rotate to make sure I get that nice round shape. And every petal, as you'll notice, is not perfectly straight out. Some of them are curved inward, and I like to just kind of have them be a little bit more random so it looks natural. But just sort of keeping it so that they're all about the same length. Now for the second flower, and being careful not to put my hand in wet paint, I'm going to go around and do the same thing for the second one. And then later on, if I feel like there are any sort of gaps or irregularities, I can make my petals larger or smaller, and I can certainly fill in those gaps. Oop, almost didn't do outward to in. Notice how I'm going out to in to keep that little petal shape going. Extra guy there. Gonna put one in that little blank spot there. One more. Yep. Perfect. And now they're both looking nice and fluffy and round. Next, I'm going to add my cute little chamomile buttons, and these are sort of the center is a little bit lighter of a yellow. I didn't go the same yellow just because I like a little variation. And for these, I'm going to paint some of them nice and round, so you're looking at the chamomile from head on, and some of them more oval, because that's what, if you look at the side of a chamomile blossom, it's a little bit more oval, so sort of a few from head on and a few from the side profile. And I'll just add a few of those around the outside of my sunflowers so that they look a little bit more balanced and bouncy. For for this next part, I want to make sure that they're totally dry, and I didn't do that, so do as I say, not as I do. But you'll see I'll make a little mistake up here. Next, I'm going to use you can either use your large or your medium-sized brush. Oh, there it is. That's why your colors run together if you paint over it too closely. I'm using my larger medium brush, again, to sort of form the shapes of my leaves. And just nice squish. These are a little bit bigger and a little freer than the petals. The good thing about watercolor is that I can go back and fix that one little piece. So have no fear, I've got it. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But I'll make sure that these are nice and filled in. There we go, and I'll go back for that little chamomile that I turned green. Just a moment. The best part about watercolor is that you can actually use a dry, clean brush to erase any mistakes, most mistakes that you've made. So I'm going to dry up my brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and soak up any of that extra paint and let that dry, and I'll come back and touch it up in a little bit. See how that just pulled the green right out of there? Next, we're going to go ahead and add cute little white flowers. These are just, I love these little blossoms. They're almost like little bees to me. They're just so happy and cheerful. So I'm gonna use a good chunk of white paint. My paint to water ratio is a little bit more on the paint side. Lots of paint, so it's nice and thick and you can really sort of see that texture. It's not gonna show up a ton on paper, but it will really pop once we add the blue background. And for this part too, please be more patient than I'm being. Let your chamomile dry before you go to add petals so that your petals don't end up yellow. But if you're impatient like me, that's okay too. Here we go, and kind of the same deal with the sunflowers. I'm using my littlest brush though, and I'm just gonna go around the circle if I need to. I might rotate my painting just so that I can keep everything sort of round and uniform looking. And any places where the white is going to overlap the green, I might go back in, or the yellow too, I'll go back in and add a second layer just to make sure that it really stands out. And here we go. I'm just gonna go over this in yellow and it'll be like it never even happened. Boop. Now to add the blue background, I'm using sort of the navy, and this will be a little bit of paint and a lot of water. The trick with this is to use the point to your advantage. As you can see, I've got my largest brush. If you want to see the exact size, check the show notes. And I'm going to work quickly and just kind of keep on focusing on the edges so that I don't end up with any little lines. But I'll start here and I'm going to work on this section, and then I'll make sure that the edge is all smoothed out, and then I'll move over to the next section. Here we go. Just continuing to sort of add more paint until it's as dark as I want it to be. Here we go along. Thank goodness for those pointed edges, pointed paint brushes. Really make the world go round. I'm going to be careful not to touch the paint because I don't want to run into the work that I've already done. I'm going to move back up here too so it doesn't dry too quickly. And then I'm going to get into sort of these little spaces between the leaves and the petals. See how that chamomile is really starting to come alive. Spreading this out a little bit, it got a little dark in there. There we go. And it's getting a little tricky to get from where I'm sitting to get these details up top. So I'm gonna flip this over. There we go. Work smarter, not harder, as they say. Starting to sort of notice that the top part and sort of this side is a little bit lighter than the corner where I started. And fortunately, because I'm working quickly, I can go back and add a little bit more blue just to make it a little bit more uniform. And if there are any little parts that look like you can see sort of lines or brush strokes, I can kind of rub those out still because it's still pretty wet over here. Okay, we're looking pretty good. And here we have it. Be sure to follow so that I can send you more fun videos as I go. And if you do this, definitely send me pictures. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing these in the wild. Ugh, look at it. So cheerful, so happy. This perfect little 5x7 is going to brighten up any bookshelf. Thanks so much. See you soon.